All right, everyone, I'll get started. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to chat with us at Tangam. Today's topic is optimizing your operational procedures in Baccarat and Roulette. Again, this kind of ties into our last webinar, is now that there is a bit of downtime that all of us as operators have the time to kind of think about our operation, look under the hood, look for ways to maybe optimize our business. I thought that this topic made a whole lot of sense during this downtime. So as far as our agenda today, our goal at Tangam is whenever you're going to make a change, it's always best from an operational sense with the smallest effort, but yet the biggest return. So when we talked about this topic today about optimizing procedures in our industry, we wanted to make sure of that. What can you change fairly quickly in your operation? That doesn't take a whole lot of effort. Obviously, casinos are closed right now. God willing, all casinos open up sooner rather than later. I'm sure we're all itching to get out there and go back to work. So something that doesn't take a lot of effort. Obviously, you want to be able to train all your dealers or staff at the time if you're going to make a change. And if you are going to make any change in your operation before you open or quickly after you open, you want to make sure that you're going to get kind of a return on that effort. And the third caveat to presenting some of the topics today in our agenda is that it's been tried and true and tested in many markets across the globe. So I'll caveat our webinar today. I know there are folks joining us from all over the globe. My intent for this webinar was to focus on North America. If you are in Asia Pacific, Europe, Australia, you may be implementing some of these strategies already today. That's frankly where I have learned them. I don't want to waste your time by any sense. I think that you might not be doing, as an operator in Europe, Asia Pacific, or Australia, you might not be doing all of these. So hopefully there's something that we can all learn from it. But I did want to caveat that the majority of U.S. operators, more than 90% of U.S. operators, do not follow some of the strategies that I will dig in today. So we'll talk about Baccarat, two main topics in Baccarat. We'll talk about commission versus non-commission. We'll talk about free hands or continuous dealing, and that's just really how do we populate trend boards. And then the second topic is transferring over to Roulette. And it's really the pricing strategy. A lot of things that I learned while I've been traveling with Tangam, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Just another strategy concept that folks in North America, outside of a couple of provinces in Canada, I think it will be a pretty cool insight that you'll get out of it. And then also in Roulette, our industry in North America is fairly split between grouped or separated games, and I'll share some information about that you can take with you. Any questions that you have, just for some housekeeping, in the Zoom, there's a Q&A section. If you have questions on any of these topics as I go through them, please jot down your questions when you think of them, but I won't get them till the end, and I will do my best to answer all of them once we get to that part, but I won't be able to stop in the middle to answer any questions. So a little bit about me, not that that's important at all, but just to bring some context to, I guess, who's chatting with you today. Again, Ari Mizrahi, many of you I do know personally, some I've never met, so good to meet you. I am responsible for the North America business at Tangam Systems, or optimization company in the table game space. I do come from an ops background, spent about 15 years in casino operations, worked in 5 different jurisdictions. I think we'll just take it for a moment to talk about how this webinar kind of came to conception. For all of us that are operators, specifically in North America, so that's where I started. That's where I worked as an operator my entire career. When you work in different jurisdictions and as you move on in your career, you tend to take your experiences from those operations and mold it into what you think are best practices when you get to that level of director or VP or whoever's in charge of implementing processes and procedures. And as many of you know, my last role, I came from Parks Casino, which is a casino outside of Philadelphia. We were very fortunate to be successful. We tapped into many of our employees' experiences throughout the country that worked for us. And, the goal was to develop best practices and procedures with all our game types that our regulators allowed. So when Tangam tapped on my shoulder to say, to offer me the role that I have, again, for many of you that know me, I'm fairly much a geek when it comes to the business. I love learning about different things. So when I went down the path of visiting all these other countries and jurisdictions, my mind was blown to see how much out there was in our industry. Because I think Steve Wynn said it best, casinos are nothing more than tables with felts, with cards, with chips and whatnot, but it's the people inside make a difference. But, you think sometimes that casinos are just casinos. And, when you look under the hoods of a lot of these casinos, you'll learn so many different things. And over the past 3.5 years, it's been a blessing for me to visit clients, visiting different jurisdictions, and really anything that's kind of just out in the public, looking under a microscope of why procedures are what. And today is kind of a culmination of what we believe are best practices from a procedural perspective for Baccarat and Roulette.